Hey, good morning. Welcome. It's the Coffee Break Show. And you know what? Today we're going to rock your world. I have Victoria Reynolds with me. And this is something that we absolutely love to talk about today. But we'll be right back with you in just a second. Welcome to the Metadime Digital Network. This is the Coffee Break Show. I'm Vickie Helm. Today's guest is Victoria Reynolds. She is a spiritual luminary. She is a best-selling author. She's a thought leader. And today we are going to poke the lie that is being told to the world. Today we are going to expand your thinking in such a way that you're going to have more peace, more happiness, and more joy. And we are going to dive in right now. Victoria, welcome to the Coffee Break Show today.
Thank you, Vickie. It is so nice to be here and so good to see you again.
Yeah, I'm excited. You know, you were on InterVersity show and now you're on the Coffee Break Show. Listen, I see you guys coming on. Do me a favor, put your name down below. Be part of the conversation. If you're on iHeartRadio, if you're on Pandora, if you're on Roku TV, if you're on Audible Live, wherever you are, welcome to the show. I want to start diving in right now. I want to talk about what exactly is it to be a spiritual luminary, and tell me a little bit about how you got there as well, just so the audience has an idea.
Okay. Well, it wasn't my choice. Let's put it that way. It's so funny. I read a post a few days ago about how people who call themselves spiritual teachers and gurus, and I'll let you go. I'm like, that was not my choice. In fact, when I found out that's who I am, it scared the Jesus out of me.
Sure.
It's something I never imagined doing. I was on a completely different life path. And the term spiritual luminary was actually given to me by one of my students who I didn't even know was a student. So I wrote my first book I started writing it in 2010. It was published in 2012. And it was a book. It's called Transcending Fear. The second edition is actually in publishing right now. I have a launch date of June 28th, which is my birthday. So we're launching the 10-year anniversary edition for my birthday. But so back in 2010, I had my midlife transition was a result of the 2008 economic collapse. I now call it my holy shift. And how many of you had a holy shift because of that recession, right?
And we're about to go through another holy shift.
Precisely. So that's what happened. So this one actually started in 2020, but we're getting to the backside of the one that's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the backside of the storm is always worse than the front side, right? So 2008 brought me to my knees. It woke me up. And that's when I started coming back to my spiritual center. And I started to discover what was really missing from my life all those years had been a connection to myself, which I now know is spirituality. At the time, I thought spirituality and religion were the same thing. I didn't realize they were two completely different things.
Absolutely.
And so I started feeling a tug. This is really funny. I started feeling a tug to go back to church. I'm like, what? There's no way. No. I was practically an atheist at the time. I was going back to church, but something was calling me spiritually. And so I started going back to the Centers for Spiritual Living, which is where I had my first awakening when I was 21. And what I didn't realize at the time, I had my first awakening when I was 21 years old in August of 1987, which I found out later was the harmonic convergence. I had no idea the relation between the two. So when I was 21, I had my first spiritual awakening. That's when I was very suicidal at the time. And that's when I discovered self-help books. And I went on this self-improvement path until I met my husband. And then we got married and did the whole business thing and had kids. And I went off on being for someone else and forgot my own spiritual path. In 2008, my spiritual path was reawakened because of this event that brought me to my knees, what I call a holy shift. And it's these awakening experiences that I call holy shifts because they're like, holy, they don't feel holy. They don't feel like a shift in the time, right? It's just holy bleep.
Yeah.
So what that did is it got me on my spiritual path again. And at the time, I didn't really know that's what it was because it works its way in, right? Because it has to get past the ego, which is afraid of the ego is afraid of everything,
Absolutely.
even if it doesn't think it is.
It is. Yes.
Yeah. So for me, it was like, well, you need to there was a book like we were saying off camera, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I'm like, I'm not afraid of anything. Like, I left home when I was a teenager. I started my own business. I started another business. I've traveled the world. I am not afraid of anything. What I started to discover is that on the surface, I wasn't afraid of anything, but I had years and years and years of unconscious fear-based beliefs I had to reckon with. Beliefs are very different from the surface fears.
That's true.
And that's what I started working with. So I started having these insights that would come in. All of us talk to ourselves all day long, every day. I mean, let's face it, we all do. We even answer our own questions.
Yes.
We don't talk out loud. Otherwise, people would think we're crazy. But there's always banter going on inside of our heads. Well, one day I was out walking and I started hearing an inner voice that wasn't the negative banter. It was more of a hopeful voice. And I started writing down what I was starting to hear. I didn't know what it was. It was just, I called it my inner therapist at the time that was teaching me how to remedy my life, because I was at the point where my house was in foreclosure. I was in the middle of a bankruptcy. Both of my kids were diagnosed with learning disorders, and my life was a wreck. I lost my business and my husband had lost his business. And I was just trying to figure out how to make some money. At the time, I remember my husband called me one day. He said, there's $17 in the checking account and I have no idea where more money is going to come from.
Wow.
His car had been repoed. All we had was my car, which we had paid off. And we were at the point where it was like, at least we have a car. If we're homeless, we have a car to sleep in. That's the point that it got to. So I was walking around my neighborhood and I'm like, show me how to fix my life. I didn't even know who I was talking to. I was talking to myself. How do I fix my life? How do I fix my life? Where can I get money to fix my life? So my inner therapist started talking to me and teaching me how to remedy my life.
Wow.
I had notebooks everywhere. I had one in the bathroom, on my nightstand, in the kitchen, in my car, in my purse, because at the time, I never even heard I had no idea about spirituality or higher self or any of that. Like I said,
I was just trying to fix the problem.
Yeah, I was practically an atheist. My daughter asked me one time about God, and I told her that word is not allowed in our house.
Wow.
Because I grew up in an extremely patriarchal fundamentalist religion. I think you knew I grew up in a polygamist cult, which was like what my husband would call patriarchy on steroids, which was like the least safe place for a little girl to grow up. Let's put it that way. And that was my childhood. So when I went home, I would have nothing to do with religion of any kind. And so even spirituality, I had gone into a center for spiritual living because a friend of mine, when I was 21, suggested that I go, and because the minister was talking about prosperity and I was curious. I'd never seen a female minister, and I could never see anybody actually talking positive about prosperity, because I was told growing up that money was evil, and if you had it, it made you an evil person. So I was actually afraid to have money. Subconsciously. Consciously, of course, that's ridiculous and absurd to be afraid of money, but subconsciously I was still running those fear-based beliefs about money, which is why I couldn't ever hold on to it. And so I was out walking, and my inner voice started communicating with me, and I would write down what came through. And eventually what I realized, it had made such a difference in my life, I knew I needed to turn it into a book for other people. And the insight that came in was that if this book helps one other person, it will have done its job. So I didn't write this book for fame and fortune and because I had a program or any of that. It was because I knew it could help other people. And that was my first book. As I said, I started writing it in 2010. By 2011, I realized what the name was. I had changed the name multiple times. So the first name for it was Escaping the Past. And then a friend of mine said, well, you can't really escape the past. Just you might want to think about that. So I sat down with that one day and I realized, oh, yeah, you can't escape your past. All we can do is change our perceptions of it, because it's always. And so I was sitting one day and I'm like, I had something. Another friend of mine said it has something to do with fear, So I was sitting in a hotel room. I'd been invited to an event for free. And I was sitting in this hotel room, and what came in was transcending fear. I'm like, oh, that's a cool word. Had no idea what it meant. Because remember, I was still at the beginning of my spiritual journey. So I wrote Transcending Fear. And it has helped a lot of people over the years who they've sent me personal messages saying, thank you so much. This book really helped me, made a big difference in my life. And then I got the guidance in 2020 to write a 10-year anniversary edition of it.
Nice.
What's really funny is I was writing a 10-year anniversary edition, and I thought I was going to come right out. But you know what? It's taken another 2 years to get published, so it really is a 10-year anniversary.
10-year anniversary, yeah.
And it's going to come out almost exactly. Actually, it came out for my birthday in 2012, and it's going to come out for my birthday in 2022. So
awesome. That is awesome. And I think the 2022 is a master number. It's really a good sign there for me. I actually think a re-release and an update of a book is a great way to be. I want to go back to the fear thing that we've been talking about, because, you know, fear is right now the great controller, the fear of everything. It's just fear. And no matter what anybody says, there is always something you're fearful of. There just is. And what's interesting about fear is when you feel fear, most people can't stay with the fear long enough to listen to it before their mind starts telling them all kinds of beliefs, that the beliefs that you were talking about. Well, I think the feeling of fear and the beliefs you have are two separate things. There's fear and then the beliefs you have. But what happens when you get that knee-jerk reaction that happens right in the second, you're like, oh my God, I'm scared. Your brain comes on at the same time and starts spewing what you're scared of without even feeling the fear, without labeling the fear. If the fear had something to say, what would it say? Maybe it has a solution for you, but we knee-jerk reaction and we're like, it's never going to happen. I'm not going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And all our negativity comes up. You were talking about listening to something that was more hopeful. You talked about not listening exactly to the fear, but what if underneath that fear is that hopeful button you were talking about? And how do you engage the hopeful button over your mind? Because our mind is
always there. It's always chattering, right?
Uh-huh.
It's a willingness to just listen, to just stop. Because the mind, we live in a fear-based reality presently.
Yeah.
So every choice we make, every unconscious choice is a fear-based choice.
Yeah.
And fear has always been used to control humanity.
Yes.
Now, fear exists as a medium for growth. So if you imagine, like you plant a seed in the darkness, and then it reaches up into the light and it starts to grow. So fear exists as a medium for growth. It also exists as a medium of self-preservation. If we didn't have it, we as a species would not survive, right? So it exists as a medium for survival, but what happened is that there are beings discovered thousands of years ago they could use fear to control people.
Yes.
So our innate, a lion is chasing me, I got to climb the tree. That's fear. That's survival, right?
Yeah.
It got manipulated to be a way of controlling humanity. So if we feel the fear, it's like, ooh, I feel fear. Why am I feeling this? And really get underneath why you're feeling it.
Yeah. Why am I feeling this? And what am I telling myself? What am I telling myself in that moment? That because part of your brain, it just automatically knee-jerk reaction. I think what you said was important. It's almost like 100th monkey fear. It's not real fear. It's manipulated into society fear.
Right.
And it's so manipulated. You're so right, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Thousands have been manipulated by fear. Once they found the hook that absolutely, makes everybody lose their mind, how can you gain your mind instead of lose it? That's the point of, I think, what you're talking about, the ability to feel the fear, just feel it without labeling it for a second. Just don't label it and just explore it for a minute. So I want to talk about I want to talk about two things because I think they're so important with fear. I have, at some point when I was younger, I was in my teens and I was working at a fast food restaurant, and I was taking the garbage out of the back one day, and a guy was in the back with a loaded revolver. It looked like a 38 special, and he stuck it in my stomach. And at first he talked, he was like, "Take off your glasses." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Take off your glasses." So I remember just grabbing my glasses and setting them on the sink and backing up because he had the gun in my stomach. And I noticed he was shaking. He was shaking, and I was shaking for a moment. But what happened to me when I was scared in that moment was that I became so aware of everything. You're so aware because there is something that happens beyond the second you say, "I could die," or "This is dangerous." So I backed up, my hands are up, and the guy's coming in. There was just me and my manager who was closing for that evening. And of course, she screamed and threw her hands up in the air because he had a gun. And something came over me that I think is what you're trying to say, Victoria. It is so important. I became so inwardly calm, and I could hear something talking to me that was not my mind. It was not any, I could hear it talking to me, and it started telling me everything. I was so calm that it calmed him down. And at one point, he was getting the money out of the safe in the floor, and there was another safe underneath the top safe. So it was a double safe. And we brought one bag of money out, and the guy looked and he was like, "Give me all the money." He didn't believe all the money was taken out of the safe. And so he started becoming more aggressive, and the gun was pointed at her, and she was like, "There's no more money in there." And he wouldn't go look in the safe because it was too exposed to the window. And I could hear this voice tell me, "Tell him to go look inside the safe. She's telling the truth." Just verbatim, word for word, exactly what I was supposed to say and do. And
Mm,
I surrendered to that because, when you're younger, you don't have so much adult thinking. What about my kids? What about you don't have adult thinking. So my head popped up and I was like, "Dude, go look in the safe. She's telling the truth. There's nothing there." And it looked like I was siding with him, but I was being directed and guided 100%. What I think the reason people want to manipulate the fear and have you believe the fear is because underneath that fear is the most powerful you. And
mm,
in that moment, I didn't have to be or do anything. I had to surrender. And when I surrendered, we got out of that situation very safe. And I've never forgotten the feeling I had. I never forgot the guidance I got. That guidance has now been guiding me anytime I feel that fear. And I think there's the point where you were talking earlier about moving that knee jerk reaction from not losing your mind, but how to gain yourself. And if you think you are your mind, then you believe you are the fear. But if
mm,
you understand that you are a soul and you have access to your mind and you have access to emotions, then you understand that there's something else guiding you outside of your own mind. And when you're crossing the street and you need to look this way and look this way to make sure you're safe, your mind is perfect for that. But when you're in certain situations like you were, where you were asking for help, your mind can't help you then. Something else that guides you, I believe, is what is helping us move forward. And for me, in my experience, I had to be shocked out of my mind not knowing what to do. It was like, "Okay, I don't know what to do about this gun. This guy's got it in my stomach. I don't know what to do." You can listen to something else other than your own fear. You can be shocked out of your own fear. Do you understand what I'm saying?
absolutely. Absolutely. Because until we get put in those situations, our mind, the fear-based narrative is controlling our mind.
Mhm.
When you get to that point where you're up, literally pushed up against a wall or brought to your knees, whatever that is,
Yeah, you gotta go
the,
past your
the
fear.
2x4 to the back of the head, whatever spirit needs to use to
Yeah.
crack us open. Then we're able to hear our true voice. Our true voice is
Yeah.
always loving, and it's always there and always available to guide us. That is what those who use fear as a means of control are really the most afraid of.
Yes, they don't want you to find that.
Power, they can't control us anymore.
That's right. And I believe the whole schism, the whole thing has been created. It's like, you hear those conspiracy theories. Fine. Here's a conspiracy theory of the fear manipulation that is actually there 100% of the time, so that you can't access all of you, so that you can't have control of all of you. And with that comes the responsibility of keeping you in that fear if you don't want somebody to do that. It's your responsibility to recognize that something or someone has manipulated you into false fear. Now, the false, to me, false fear is manipulated fear. It's media fear. It's sensationalism at some point, where you should be so very afraid of absolutely everything. There's only one thing I know of that night. I know that if I would have died, I would have been okay. If I lived, I would have been okay. The mind has a moment of where we think we're not going to be okay anymore. That's what fear does. You won't be okay anymore if you lose all your money. You won't be okay anymore if your house burns down. You won't be okay if you lose your job. You won't be okay if your relationship breaks up. There's so much unnecessary fear mongering that I think people are experiencing for the first time ever. Continuous anxiety, not moments of anxiety, but continuous anxiety. And as long as that continuous anxiety is there, you cannot contact you. And this is where you have to put the brakes on yourself. How is it, like, what would you say to somebody who is just starting? How do you put the brakes on fear? How do you put the brakes on it and allow something else to creep in, even if it's only for a nanosecond?
Stop, look, and listen.
Stop, look, and listen.
It's like the drop, stop, roll, right? But it's stop, look, and listen. It's just stop. Just stop and listen for a minute. Is this real? Or is this, again, the acronym for fear, false evidence appearing real, is such a perfect, now I use my own. I have the acronym I personally use is face, everything, and rise. But the acronym of false evidence appearing real, that's like a perfect description for it, because fear is not real. It's how our mind interprets what's happening around us that creates this illusion of fear. If we'll stop and just listen, is what I'm seeing on television real? Or is this just someone's story, someone else's interpretation of what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
Stop, listen, right? Stop, look, and listen. Stop, look at what's going on, and then listen inside. Because the truth that's inside of you will very often be completely different than the story that's being fed to us. Yeah. How many people take the time to actually stop? They just get caught up in this whirlwind of a storm of fear that's being spread. I mean, the real virus is fear itself, right? It's being spread. And I've been saying that for years. The virus isn't a bug. It's not this. It's not. It is fear itself that's being spread like wildfire across the media and the conversations that we have. We're just spewing fear at each other. Stop. Look at what's really going on. Where is this really coming from? Who's really saying this? And then listen to the truth that's inside of us, because the truth is always inside of us. It's just constantly having to deal with this fear-based banter that's going on inside of our head.
Yes. And
quiet banter for a minute, the truth can get in.
I want to go there because I think that's really important. To me, fear has a component of you being outside of yourself. if you're truly grounded inside yourself, just like you are right now, I can see the radiance from you as you're talking, etc. Once you're with you, you can't be manipulated that way. In order for fear to be taken inward, you have to go outward to see it. You have to be looking at the news or having something being told to you that's fear provoking. You have to believe it. You have to engage with it. And you just said something that was so important. Where is your attention? Because whatever you focus on, that's going to grow. Whether you put your attention on yourself and your own interconnection with your own divine, that's going to grow, or you're outwardly there and you're going to not pay attention. And I want to get, there's so much to unpack here. I'm so excited about the conversation. I can see myself running over here and there and there. But I just want to pull me back in for a second, because I want to really be clear. We are not saying that fear is bad, but fear is information. And what happens is that we don't read the information. We don't look at the information. We will let our mind come on and say, it's this, it's that, it's the other. It means this, it means that. It's all going to go break loose. We don't actually listen to the actual information that's coming in. So I want to get really clear here about the difference between, I think there's healthy fear and there's unhealthy fear. And I think the unhealthy fear has absolutely usurped basic reason in a human being. And I would like to go talk about what is healthy fear and what is unhealthy fear.
Okay.
So
healthy fear is it is an important integral part of the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
We have fear as a means of self-preservation.
A warning.
Yeah. So you're not going to let your kid run out in the street. You're right. You see your child heading for the street and you see the cars coming. You're going to go into fear and you're going to run out and grab your child. Right. That is healthy fear. Real fear. It's like a lion is chasing you. Real fear is going to get you to climb the tree so the lion doesn't eat you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
that's
real fear. It is, and it exists also as I said, a means of self-preservation. And fear is attached to our ego. And ego is also not a bad thing. I'm really, really tired of people ego bashing. The ego exists for a reason. It is our inborn self-preservation. And we just need to make peace with it. Once we make peace with our fear, make peace with the ego, then it doesn't rear its head. Not that it's ugly. It's actually a hurt little child that just needs our love and attention. The fear isn't persistent when we recognize it and we acknowledge it and understand that there's something underlying it. And it's okay. So the good fear exists. Like I said, it is a means of self-preservation. So the issue is that some people learn how to manipulate that need for self-preservation and turn it into a constant narrative that has us hijacked. That's false fear. It's this constant, it's being fed to us in the news and the media and television
and we have
everything.
We have a level of enjoying the negative intimacy of this type of fear. It's like we have to go.
We actually have an addiction to it.
Yes, that's the whole point. And it keeps you outside looking at that, what's happening with the Kardashians. Is there really a divorce? And what happened with this, runaway? We'll watch the cops chase the car on TV just to see what's going to happen. It's like we are addicted to fear in a way that is so unhealthy. But we have to unravel fear. We can't just say, fear is bad and bliss is good, because then we can walk ourselves into toxic positivity as well. But when we get to the point where we're discerning, true fear is information in the moment. Don't walk across that in front of that bus. Don't, I know every woman has experienced this. You're at a party, you're at a restaurant, every woman has been That dude over there, stay away from him. He's a predator. Every woman has had that feeling of a man like, yeah, that man I want to stay away from. I don't even want to know him. Every woman has gotten to the point where their awareness heightens when they're walking in a dark parking garage to their car. That kind of fear, that is an awareness builder. When I used to be a police officer, I spent a time as a cop, and most people know that, but if you don't, now you do. I remember at the end of the time I was a police officer, I had a bit of PTSD, obviously. And one of the ways that was really something is that pulling out that gun every single time, you had to pull out that gun and make the decision whether you were going to use it or not. And so what happened was I was sitting down with a therapist after I'd retired, and I was talking to them, and I was saying the only way I felt super awake was I had this PTSD. I was awake all the time watching my back. And she was like, huh, that's great awareness. How can we have the awareness without the fear on top of it? How can you just build the awareness without, covering it with fear? Because what fear does is make you super aware. It makes you super aware of the right thing. It makes you super aware of the wrong thing. It makes you super aware of the story or whatever else that can be there that misleads you. But the truth is, you are more awake in fear. And so, how can you remove the fear and just be the wakefulness, the awareness? And when I got that, I was like, yes, that's the blessing of this. It wasn't that I had PTSD long, it was that moment. How can I just create the level of awareness that you have in fear and stay awake as a natural state of beingness? And that to me helped me understand the power of what happened during the robbery when I was in my teens working at the taco shop, and the guy came with the gun. That's what I had in the beginning. I had extreme fear. My mind didn't know what to do. I had to listen to something else other than my mind, and that something else could come up. And suddenly that's where fearlessness is in that moment, because I just took off the fear off the top. It wasn't serving me. Right now, if fear serves you, you're going to feel it. How can we move past that?
Well, yeah, it's funny. What I keep hearing is get out of your mind and into your heart.
Yes. Yes. Let's talk
So
about
most
how
of
to
the
do that.
yeah, most of the fear that we have isn't that hyper awareness kind of fear.
Mhm.
It's the false fear. None of us really are in danger.
That's right.
We're
And
not
even back then,
really in that. We're not in that necessary hyper awareness danger. So what happens when you're in that situation is that the adrenaline kicks in, and that's what, like, woo,
yeah,
so hyper aware.
fight or flight.
Right. And so, well, what we really have, they've actually discovered since they started including women into the studies, imagine that, they now know it's fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And so when we get into hyper, like when we're faced with that situation, it's one of those three automatic choices. So it's one thing to be there, to pause in that for just a minute, to be able to listen to what's best. The issue is that a lot of people just automatically relax. They don't take the time to just sit and be, even if that's a few seconds, but it's just a few seconds of, oh, I see this all happening here. And I hear some people are trained for that, right? They go through the training and they can see everything happening around them. Well, most of the time, all we see is what's right in front of us. That kind of fear puts us in a situation where we see more than we normally would. But we can drop out of our minds and into our hearts and have that same experience. When you drop into the heart space, that's where we get to hear what's really best for us and what's best for the entire situation. The issue is that we're always being bombarded with this surface fear, right? That always keeps our mind busy and always in fear. So we actually can't drop into our heart space and listen to the messages that want to come through from inspiration. And so it's really, one, recognizing that all this fear we're being fed is false. It's just a narrative. It's not real fear. And Yes, see it, but don't allow yourself to wallow in it. Instead, go into your heart space. How can I look at this from a different perspective? What is my, what is, what are my angels, guides, spirit, inner truth, whatever? Pick a label that works for you,
Yes,
trying to
yes,
tell me about this situation.
yes.
So I'll have an example. I had an example a few weeks ago where I went through a financial situation and I started going into fear. And then I stopped. I was like, wait a minute. I know better than this. I know better than this. I'm not going to allow fear to run away with me on this. I
Yeah.
know that everything's going to be okay. When I dropped back into that knowing, that absolute truth, then the solutions started to show themselves.
Oh God, I love that you're saying this. I love that you're saying this right now. It's some of the most powerful truth. Now, you remember how everybody always says you got to have faith. And so this is the point where the faith is. When you're in fear, in the beginning, you're going to have to force yourself to stop,
Right.
to just question you, to call you out, to challenge you in a way. You're going to have to force yourself to stop for a moment. It's not going to come like Victoria just said, where it was like, I know better than this. This is a person with a good batting average. The first time you get up to bat, you're going to whiff a couple of times, but eventually you're going to take the bat and hit the ball out of the park. So you're going to take the fear and move it out of the way, just like she did. But you're going to have to force yourself to stop. You're going to have to ask yourself something like, what am I saying? And believe it or not, if you're saying something scary to yourself, trust me, if anybody said it to themselves, they'd be scared. No matter what you're saying if anybody said, I'm going to lose my house or I'm going to lose my job, or no matter who it was that said that to themselves, they were going to feel fear. It's not like some singular incident that you are going through right now. It's just you with your mind. So here's the thing. Then the second thing you're going to have to do is force yourself to listen to you. And in the beginning, what I know is when fear and ego want their way, the first thing they're going to do is go, okay, she said stop. So stop. And they'll stop for about 30 seconds, if that long. And then they'll start again. And you got to, hey, I said stop. Who's in charge here, me or you? And that's who's got to be there. Is it me or you that's in charge? And you may have to stop yourself over and over and over. And that's the batting practice Vickie is talking about. That's the batting practice of getting up and stopping you. Now, what I want to do is have some incantation that somebody can say to themselves over and over, even if it's an I am statement, because what Victoria said, I'm sorry, I'm just, everybody's Vickie to me, but Victoria said so clearly, she said, I know better than that. And the second that she said that, her mind became like a servant that laid at her feet, and she was in charge. I'm at the helm now. I'm at the helm. I know better than that. I am not going to let you run away with my reason, run away with my knowing. And that's the important piece. If you talk about what's the work, this is why it's so important to read her books or be in connection with her. You have to detox yourself from your own fearful thinking that has been trained into you. I want to talk, Victoria, and ask any neuroscience that shows, or any kind of science that shows, maybe you grew up in a situation where you had to be vigilant because there might have been violence around you and you had to protect yourself, and so your knee-jerk reaction is vigilant fear. Now you're safe, you're no longer in that fearful thing, but your knee-jerk reaction is happening in that way. Is there any neuroscience that says how long it might take to transform that fear reaction into a transformation reaction, we'll call it? So that, and what are the tools for that we can perhaps use? Because I know a lot of people right now have grown up in fear. They've grown up in fear, and it's so ingrained. It's in their cellular memory, it's in their karmic actions, etc. And I'm wondering how can we transform that, um, after you say stop and you listen to your heart for a second, and 30 minutes later, because your mind will come on and go, it's not working to do that. and you'll start believing. How long do we have to stay with that before the transformation pieces happen? Do you have any idea or anything knowledge about that?
And it depends on the person. It depends on how vigilant they are. I'm being reminded of a book called Biology of Belief. I haven't read it, but I think it's by Dr. Bruce Lipton. I think he might actually go into that from the more scientific background. In fact, when that book first came out, he got ridiculed by the medical community because it was so out of the box. I think his book might be about that. That's actually what my book Transcending Fear is about, is the process of being able to shift from the subconscious mind into the conscious mind. That's really what the issue is the subconscious mind is running the show. It automatically goes into fear because that's how our mind was programmed when we were small. We automatically go into that subconscious, unconscious reaction rather than taking the time to consciously respond. So this is about learning how to train your mind so that your more of your conscious mind is what is making your choices for you rather than your unconscious mind.
Yes.
My understanding is, like everything, it takes 21 days, right? They say it takes 21 days to make a habit. What happens with beliefs, it works the same way. So my understanding is that if you are working on changing a belief and you repeat the new belief every day for 21 days, it actually starts to solidify into your physical makeup. So as you were saying, what we know about epigenetics and about beliefs is that those beliefs actually get coded into our physical genetic makeup.
Yeah.
We can change those. So about 50% of our genetic makeup is fixed and about 50% of it is malleable. The 50% that's fixed are things like eye color and hair color and color, things like that.
Correct.
And basic personality.
That's right.
We actually re-become who we were. What really is that we come back to who we were when we were born. As we're removing all the fear-based beliefs that we picked up throughout our lives. And I call it re-becoming who we were always meant to be and dismembering.
That's right.
Yeah. So the process takes initially about 21 days. And one of the reasons I had explained to me is that within 21 days, some of the cells in our body start turning over. The new cells are then programmed with the new belief. And then after about 42 days, it starts to really solidify. So there becomes a point where we get to where we're like, wow, I can't believe I ever believed that. Because it is just no longer even in us.
Yes. And it's
it isn't an instant.
This is so interesting because the faith piece that Victoria's talking about, how they say change your mind, change your life. This is exactly what she's talking about. This is the how. It's not change your thought, change your life. It's change the whole mind. And what you get to the point where you're like, God, I can't even believe I really believe that. It's kind of like, oh, I can't believe I believed there was a Santa Claus. Wow, Larissa, good morning, all the way from Australia. It's a crack of dawn. You're in the middle of the night. Welcome to the Coffee Break Show, my friend. Nice to see you on. It's probably got to be like 2 a.m. in the morning there. But anyway, I want to say to you that I think some of the things you're talking about are the fundamental work that so many gurus talk about and they avoid, or they give you some sort of thing that isn't going to work. The things that are going to work in that 21-day cycle, that thing that is going to shift your perspective of how you see things, how you view things, and who you are. What she's talking about is fundamentally finding out who you actually are and you designing the concept of yourself that you want to hold. Right now, we hold a fear-based concept of ourselves given to us by somebody else. It's not even us. We haven't even decided to be who we are. We have learned and been indoctrinated and have been taught how to be outside of ourselves, how to be completely, taken away by somebody else's agenda. And I'll call that the fear agenda. And the fear agenda has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. But let me tell you something. She said something that was really important about the difference between your personality and who you actually are, which I'm going to call soul. Personality is what you look like on the side. Like she has blonde hair, I have black hair with gray speckles everywhere. And we're looking at the color of my eyes and her color of the eyes and everything about the size of my hand and the size of my shoes or my feet. Those are all personality traits. Everything that dies and stays here when you die is your personality. What dies is personality, who you are, the soul of you. That just lives on and on and on and on and on and on for those old school rappers. But I mean, we get to the point where we know that we are not what we think. We're not this meat suit. But what's underneath that, when that concept is changed, your entire sculpted life will change. That's the beauty of, and when she's saying this, I agree with her. Neuroscience, any habit, 21 days. And then things start to change or shift or move or whatever. So that this fundamental conversation is about unearthing the spiritual piece to you. Now, I want to talk, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the spiritual piece of it right now, because I think once you get that fear thing off you, once that's there, some of your spiritual gifts start showing up. Corinthians in the Bible, I want to say it's chapter 12, might be verse 12, but it's Corinthians 1-12. Talks about to each person there's a certain gift. There's the gift of sight, there's the gift of talking, there's the gift of knowing, there's the gift of seeing, and it's labeled in there. Every person has a gift in them, every single person. And what ends up happening for everybody when they get rid of that fear is these gifts start unearthing themselves and they become purposeful in how you live your life. I want to talk about, I just want to pop over here for a second. I just woke up having trouble sleep. It's 3 a.m. That's because you were supposed to hear this message with us. You were supposed to meet Victoria. Victoria, this is Larissa. Larissa, this is Victoria. Thought leader and spiritual person. When I walk over here, I agree, but I have to say during the lockdowns, it was a super challenge to stay focused in awareness when it appeared that the sky was falling all around us. Constant redirecting my thoughts. Yes, you have to do that. That's still going on right now. It's not going away. They're going to do more and more and more and more of that because it's working. But it's time to take your power back. It's really time. So, Larissa, we're experiencing mind control, but are designed to so amazingly strong, not to be influenced by it. We need to make decisions first. Yes, we need to make hard decisions that are, I'm not letting somebody take my mind. But I want to talk about after the breakthrough happens, when there's something beautiful that happens when you break through this fear agenda. And what happens is you show up. And suddenly when you show up with all your gifts, at first you're like, oh my God, I can, and you get caught in the gifts, but it's who you are is that. And maybe you hear somebody else speaking to you. Maybe you have these gifts that show up. I want to talk about that. Larissa says, nice to meet you, Victoria.
Hi, nice to meet you too, Larissa.
Yeah.
I love Australia.
Good morning and hugs. Grab your coffee and join us. We're having this conversation. So, Victoria, what happens? And I want to be really clear, because when you start to unfold spiritually, fear comes back in and it could say, it's the devil, it's this, it's that, it's the other. You can't do this. You can't channel. You can't, write. You can't do whatever you're doing. Fear will continue to try and hound you out of becoming the thing that you actually are. And I want to know, what did you put in place where you just said, begone fear?
Oh, it's so funny. I actually did a video called Begone Fear back in like 2012. Begone! And I completely forgot about that.
Well, it's an incantation of some
Get
sort.
behind me, fear. It's like the get behind me, Satan thing. It's that same kind of thing, because that actually is that is where that comes from. I mean, people call it Satan, they call it evil, they call it darkness, whatever it is. It is It is the dark side of the contrast. When we start to really look at it for what it really is, we as human beings, we as souls, chose to incarnate in human form specifically to experience the contrast. Specifically because we're up for the challenge of seeing if we could find our light in the darkness, and if we could find our love within the fear. We chose to come and experience the fear because it's such a great medium for growth. So when we start to recognize that that's all it is, it's just a medium for growth, it starts to lose its control over us.
Yeah.
And then when we start to recognize that that's all that it is, then the truth starts coming in, and we start to remember who we really are as divine beings having a human experience.
Yeah.
And all of us are, even the worst people on the planet, as we would judge them, right, are divine beings having a human experience.
Yes. That's beautiful. Thank you.
But what happens is that we hold people in judgment, and judgment is actually a fear-based belief.
That's true.
So this is why I talk about fear-based beliefs rather than just fear, because fear-based beliefs are even more subtle than fear itself. So they're feeding us fear across the media. That's the obvious fear. It's the underlying fear-based beliefs that are created, that we start creating as children because of what we're experiencing as children, that actually have the hold on us. So it isn't what we're seeing on TV that's causing us to be afraid. It's something inside of us that's being triggered to cause us to feel fear. I had a completely different experience with the lockdown. Well, I knew the lockdown was coming a couple of weeks before it came. And the message I kept getting is, this is where humanity gets to go inside.
Yep.
And remember who they are.
Absolutely. And remember why they are. Remember who they are.
Go inside and remember why. So a lot of people went in and reconnected with Source.
Yeah.
Go in and be quiet and remember whom. And how many people had spiritual awakenings during lockdown?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really why we have the Great Resignation. It's not just, I want more money. It's, I want my quality of life. The reason I did this is because, and
people got a taste of it.
Yeah. They stepped into that. And I think that is, I had that same vision too. It was a moment where everything stopped, so much that in the beginning we saw deer and animals coming into cities. Like, where are the people, man? They vanished. You know, that's really true. And it challenged every single belief and indoctrination that we had been living in from that point. I mean, if we looked at China at that time, all the lockdowns, those people were like, okay, this isn't cool. And inside of every single country, there has been challenge to politics, not just in the United States,
Right.
but right now in Canada with all the truckers, with in the UK with all the, mandatory mask and mandatory this. There was a point where we got to challenge what our quality of life looked like. And what many people found was, I want to be closer to my family, with more time with my family. I want to be able to sleep and rest with my body. I want to be able to work from home and not in a building. Why do I have to go sit with a bunch of people when I can work at home? That was a beautiful thing. It was an amazing amount of wherewithal that we were allowed to have.
Right. Well, it was the catalyst from the mass awakening. So back in 2010, I started getting this indication that a great awakening was coming, that the masses of humanity would start waking up, and that a lot of us had woken up first to had our spiritual gifts activated ahead of time, because there was this
way
great
ahead of time. Yep.
And 2020 was the catalyst that caused that to happen. The planet is waking up. People all over the world are having their awakening experiences and remembering what's really important to them, and realizing all this stuff they've been fed about how they have to go out and eat every night, and how they have to have this and they have to have that, and they have to drive the right car and be seen with the right people and blah, 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 blah. That's also part of the false narrative.
Yes.
people are starting to realize, oh, all I really need is to be with my family and do something I love. And all that other stuff is just
Yes. Yeah.
narrative to keep me busy and to keep the people at the top even richer.
That's right. And it's so interesting because so many families have gotten to the point where they realize that they actually like to be together and not so apart. And suddenly these, families are starting generational businesses, whether they're online businesses. Suddenly it's, my daughter and my son are helping us, and we have a new micro farm starting in the garage. It's like all of a sudden these family businesses, which is what the world was built on, was family businesses. And now they're starting to pop up, and people are starting to pay attention to what they want, and they're buying land and farms, and they're tired of the way the food is, the way that everything is, and the taxes, etc. And to me, what's great about this awakening, no pun intended, is that this is going to be long term. It is not going to be, oh, the pandemic's over, let's go back to the way it was. Not going to happen. And we get to choose in this moment, choose love or choose fear. And that's what Victoria is saying right now. Now, Victoria, we're getting towards the end of the show, and I may go a little over. I hope you don't mind. But I want to get to the point where they have access. She has several books out, and they are worthy of reading. And I don't know whether it's Rise Up or whatever, but what I would like is I would like a website that people can go to, a way of getting a hold of you and saying, listen, I want to work with you to overcome my fear. I want to find my spiritual gifts. I want to read one of your books. Let's get to the point where, and Robin, I know you're there. Would you do me a favor and type it into, when she says it, will you type it into the comments for me? Thanks. And if you're if you're driving in the car, listening to the show, just relax. It's going to be in the show notes. It's going to be in the thread. Be safe, be, aware. And yes, I like that. Thank you. She said, yes, it's time to be in the gap. So where can they go to be with you, work with you, have more from you? Where can they go? What can they do?
Easy peasy. It's VictoriaReynolds.com.
VictoriaReynolds.com. VictoriaReynolds.com. Everything you want is on that site right there.
Yeah, and I do have a free book there. My book right now is Rise Up. It is free. I just have to let people know that every once in a while it doesn't work. There's like a glitch in the system. So sometimes they get their download and sometimes they don't. If they don't, just shoot me an email and I'll physically email them the copy of Rise Up. I have a new free gift that's coming in a couple of weeks. I just need to record a couple more videos. And then Rise Up will become a book that you have to buy. But right now it's free. Also, if you go on to the section that's called Shop, you'll see my other books and you'll see the programs that I have. I have my Transcendence Process program is actually based on the book that I wrote, the Transcending Fear book. And I finally got the guidance a year ago, 10 years later, to turn it into a program so I can teach people this process. I was actually shown 10 years ago that someday I would turn it into a program to teach people. And I finally started doing that. And the next class starts in June. So it's a perfect time to check it out.
Beautiful.
And then I have 60 Money Tree program, which is teaching people how to get over their fear of money, which was a humongous issue for me, as we talked about. And then also my sessions are on there first. So if people want to check out how to have a personal session with me, my sessions are at the bottom of the page too. And my YouTube channel is Fearless and Free TV.
Would you put that up for me? I have on it right in the show, right there in the below. It's VictoriaReynolds.com. Will you please put in the YouTube channel in there? You'll find that I'm a subscriber to that channel as well. And you can go ahead and put that in there. What's the YouTube channel again?
Fearless and Free TV.
It
is all about being fearless and free from the fear-based reality. So everything I teach is about moving out of fear and moving into love, because we are leaving the fear-based reality behind and we are creating a new love-based reality. That's what we're moving into, which is why we're not going to go back to the way things were. You know, they were talking about creating new normal. We, the ones we've been waiting for, we the people are the ones that are creating the new normal. And the
Yeah,
new
we are the new normal.
it's hard.
That's right. You got that right. YouTube, Fearless and Free TV. It's in the threads right now. You can look at it. And Victoria Reynolds, I am going to put you on the spot a little bit and ask you, could you, it's going to be the end of the show, but could you give us a message for humanity right now so that whoever's driving, listening, etc., can we just share a message from you for humanity and just take a moment, just a short message for the world?
Yes, don't allow yourself to get sucked into the fear. It is a false narrative that's being created to keep you stuck in the old world. When you understand it's a false narrative that's just created to keep you stuck, recognize that what you're capable of and where we are going is so much better. And where you put your energy, where you put your focus is where humanity is going. It's interesting. The visual I'm getting is that, especially for those of you who are in the car, love the visual that's coming through. I have a very active third eye. Because I get visual. The visual I'm getting is that you're in your car. If you're focused on the fear, it's like driving while looking in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. Driving forward while looking in the rearview mirror.
Look at where you want to go and let that be your focus.
Look at where you want to go and let that be your focus. Look at this already. Thank you for that message, Victoria. Yes, if you want to drive forward, you can't look in the rearview mirror. Drive forward, keep your eyes on the road, and focus on where you want to go. A powerful message. Thank you for handling the fear agenda and narrative that is polluting this planet right now. You're doing the big real work. The big real work. It's another David and Goliath moment for me when I look at the persons who are out there actually challenging the narratives that are being presented. If you want to get a hold of Victoria Reynolds, we've left you all kinds of, you can go to victoriareynolds.com. You can go to Fearless and Free TV. I want to thank you for being on the Coffee Break Show today. It has been absolutely outstanding. And as always, next week, we're going to have a really awesome guest. I'll see you next week on the Coffee Break Show. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.